Hi, everyone. I am so excited because I am speaking with author Catherine Bybee, and here's her book, and she's got it too. And I love this so much. I love the cover, Changing the Rules.
Thank-
I loved the girl on the cover. I'm reading a book, a main character, and I keep looking at her, and I thought she was perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, I picked
for
her
this-
out. I actually had a long list. I have a bunch of models that they showed me.
Oh, really?
I was able to pick her out. Yeah.
And
She was exactly what I pictured. So that made it very easy for the cover to match the inside pages, which is always nice.
She is Claire. And I did not know that Claire showed up in another one of your books. I was reading through some of your press and everything. So
Uh-huh.
she's a character that you brought back.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. She
That's
showed up on the page in Say It Again. Sasha's was the unexpected first wife in that series. It was only going to be a 4-series book, and then Sasha was a character that kind of showed up on the first page of that series. And so at the end of that series, I'm like, I can't not give Sasha a story. She'd been part of it. When I started her story, I'm like, ooh, I want to make a mini me, Claire kind of showed up as a mini Sasha. It was just one of those moments, and she just kind of fell in. And then I don't plot my books at all. So when she showed up, it was like, ooh, how do I make this work? And so I made it work for that story. And then as it went on, I'm like, ooh, there's some chemistry going on between her and Cooper. Ooh, I can't make another first wife. Ooh, how do I do this? Hey, publisher, would you be interested in another series? And they're like, yay, Bybee, another series.
First of all, as a reader, and as you will know because you've read all the other reviews on Goodreads, especially your fans are so into your characters.
Yes.
And because we love that. We love when they keep coming back up.
I love it when they come back.
We feel like we're in, in.
You're inside the you want to call it a soap opera. Dallas, remember Dallas back then? I'm really aging myself.
Yes.
JR. Anyway, right? We're in it, and I love that. I remember one of my earliest reads of books was Kathleen Woodward's, and she would do that with hers. And every once in a while, you would get a glimpse of her heroes and heroines in the books, the subsequent ones, very little bits. And I was like, if I'm ever a writer, I'm going to keep people alive. And I've done that. In fact, Neil McBain, he is
right.
If you read the Weekday Bride series, he shows up in the very first book as the bodyguard to the very first hero in the very first book of the very first series. I loved Neil. In fact, maybe I wouldn't want to marry Neil because he's to be married to, but
you know what? I'm thinking, maybe because of our age and we were so into soap operas.
Right.
So we understand that people want to be in the story.
Oh, yeah.
They don't always want, a standalone is fine, but I'm always at the end of a standalone, I'm like, they need to write another one. Like especially if it didn't end the way you wanted to, you're like, no, you got to keep going.
Right.
But we love those. And this is the first one of a series. And I saw the next one's coming out in July. Oh, you have it. I can't wait. We're going to talk again because I'm going to for sure. I loved this book. First one I've read of yours, and I couldn't put it down.
Oh, I love to hear that.
I was in it awesome. For Claire, and I rooted for her the whole time. But tell me about this story, because this is so important for today's world.
It's hugely important. So
not talked about enough.
Right.
And I thought your story showed how, not that it's, widely, but just how it can creep into a school.
Here's the thing. It is widely. When I started, it is. So human trafficking.
We don't believe that as parents, that it's so.
Oh, we don't want to believe it. And I put it in a very urban setting that people can identify with. When people all over the world, Los Angeles is a place that people, they all know about because it's always in photographs. It's always in movies. It's always everywhere. And I put it in ambiguous schools, and I put it in prep schools, and I put it in the public schools, and I put it there. But it happens everywhere. And I did a lot of my research here in San Diego where I live. I have a friend who is a vice principal at a school in a local high school here. And she's like, oh yeah. I was plotting, or not plotting, but I was struggling with my plot line, and I was taking a walk, and I ran into her, and I'm like, you're in a school. Tell me, do you know anything about, human trafficking in the high school? She goes, oh yeah. Let me tell you about this. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And so she goes, no, go look this up. There's this case that happened in San Diego. Go look it up. And I looked it up and I was just absolutely astounded and shocked about the prevalence of teenage prostitution that is brought in. And now my book, I twist it and make it a little bit bigger than reality sometimes, because I bring in a different element, which I do with Bybee books. I want to use Claire's ability to speak different languages, and I want to use her global knowledge. So I bring in a different element. But the reality is, with human trafficking in the high school level, it does really start with the local gang influence. And some people think, well, it can never happen to my kids because they don't get involved in gangs. The problem is, we don't understand. We live in this generation.
Right.
Right. And right now, more than ever, I think we find that living inside of this, especially for teenage girls, and I'm going to stress that, but it can be boys as well, especially when we've got so much gender identification and am I or aren't I and all this different stuff and shaming and life. And we're really opening those doors and busting those things open. But when you live in a teenage is hard anyway. You add everything that goes on inside of here. Oh, this person's ugly. Oh my God, can you see the cottage cheese on her thighs? Now all of a sudden we have paved the road for that guy that's somewhat charismatic. Maybe he drives a bike. Maybe he's just a little on the edgy side. Maybe he's got a tattoo. My parents wouldn't approve, but I don't like my parents anyway. Next thing you know, you're in this moment and you start sleeping with this guy and you're fighting with your parents. And hey, babe, why don't you just, this guy over here is going to give us $1,000. All you got to do is give him next thing you know, this isn't prostitution at this point. When people, they're the pimp. They're not the pimp. They are farming these girls out, and they are slaves to a trade that they don't know how to get out of once they're in. And it's tragic. It is absolutely tragic. And I hope that this book makes people stand up and think.
I did.
Good.
And I have to tell you, I am so happy that I didn't have all this social media in high school. I barely survived.
I'm just glad that the things that I did when I was in high school aren't around for everybody to know.
I barely survived my childhood, let alone to have it documented on.
Oh my gosh!
Snapchat, right? Or any of those.
Right.
Instagram, which is the worst for teenage girls and and guys, and
Twitter. And Twitter is where the trolls live.
You open it up to find out you aren't popular anymore. You're like, wait, I thought it was popular. Like everybody's hating on me. I mean, I can't. The mental abuse, I can't even imagine.
Bullying, cyberbullying is an absolute, and that's a travesty as well. And I like to bring in aspects of my books that are real life situations. And I think I've done it with this one without it being a YA. And I think that was kind of important. I think I mixed a little YA in with adult romance, because it is an adult romance, but I do put it in a high school situation. So I've kind of got a 21 Jump Street meets Charlie's Angel vibe going here, which my 80s girl inside of me was all about. And honestly, it's because of COVID, because you're sitting around watching umpteen hours of old crap that you stopped watching 20 years ago, right? Because all of our butts gained an extra 10 pounds last year. So I had to come up with some ideas of what I was going to do. And I'm like, well, I liked these shows. Let me watch them. And then I'm like, ooh, I've got this idea.
I'm telling you, I would have paid hard cash last year if they would have released General Hospital from the 80s. Okay.
Luke and Laura.
You would have come with Amazon would have been like $100. You can have, a year. I would have paid hard cash. Okay.
Right.
Here.
When we were running around the mall. Because that today.
And we went back, but it was a very weird, bizarre phenomenon, but we did. But what I want to hear about when you just brought up briefly is when you said you don't plot them. I always find that so interesting, because you hear authors that they sit down, they do these outlines, elaborate outlines.
Good for them.
And write and then just write the book, because they've already got the outline. They know the ending. They know what, how it's going to go. You don't, you just sit down and you're like.
I sit down, I start writing. Sometimes I'll come up with things that are just out there. I had another interviewer ask me, are you a Star Wars fan? Because I called them Loki and Yoda. I'm like, no, not really. I just like to give my characters nicknames, because, always saying honey or sweetheart or whatever. It just gets old, and you don't always call them by their first name. So I like to give people different names, and like character parts. So I give these girls a different name because they're best friends, and you know, whatever. So I do that, and it adds just character to it. I don't, those just kind of come up. It's later on that I might incorporate something. I'm like, ooh, this pull plays in. Maybe I can do this, you know. And it's crazy how that my mind works that way. But I'm not alone. I'm happy to say about 50% of us don't plot a thing. We just sit down and go, well, there's a boy, there's a girl, there's a plot somewhere in all that.
I know, but it seems like so much fun to
It
see
is.
because you don't know where it's going. You kind of just write.
No.
You're just kind of like, oh, I didn't think she was going to do that, or you know.
Right, right. I knew, like when I sat down to write this one, I knew who they were. I knew briefly kind of where they were starting, and I knew I wanted to incorporate human trafficking.
Right.
And when I first sat down to do it, I was trying too hard, and I was really working hard to try and make it very, very realistic to what's going on today. Unfortunately, that would have required me bringing in a lot of human trafficking and slavery coming in from out of this country. I'm really close to Mexico. Literally, you could throw a pebble and reach it. And there's a lot of human trafficking that gets pulled over the border, as well as flown in from different countries. And it's tragic. But that wouldn't have worked well. It would have been a saga, not a romance novel. So that's not what I write, and that's not what I'm going to deliver to my fans. They wouldn't have been happy with that. So I had to, bring it down to a level that was readable, educational enough to get people thinking. Right. Protect your kids. Listen. Pay attention.
Attention, right. So were you like a big Danielle Steele fan back in the day?
Back in the day, yes, I read Danielle Steele early on. I couldn't even tell you the names of the books that I read of hers because it's been so long. Sad. God, and she just released another book.
I just read it. I was reading it back then. She was like my first like romance. About 2 years ago, I kept seeing her pop up like a lot. And then I realized she was writing a book like every 3 months. So I just picked one up and I read it and I was like, wow, this is so good. Our age group, like Danielle Steele would have been really big into our world of beginning to read romance, very, very light romance stuff. And then my Jackie Collins kind of kicked in for a little while.
Right. Well, because there's those, there's just those writers that just encompass the I don't know, the saga and the epic and the, that family and that, and I think she falls into that category, she does.
Yeah. I mean, you've written so many books and now you have another one coming out, that one in July. What do you have like a game plan for your years, like 2 books, 1 book? I mean, how do you do it?
Well, I actually just did this math. In the last 6 years, since I got divorced 6 years ago, I have had a few epic things happen in my life.
You were a nurse? You were a nurse?
I was an ER nurse before. So I haven't actually done that since 2007. I got hurt on the job. So that's a whole different interview and that would take forever. But that was when I started writing. That was 11 years ago. So there's just been a lot of things in my life. But in the last 6 years, I've written 19 books, full-length books.
Wow.
So that equates to a little over 3 a year. And so now I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. I'm 3 a year right now. I'm probably going to stretch it out to like 2 a year for a little while, give myself and my brain. 2020 did a good job on everybody, I think. And it's time for me to refuel. I got to refuel the tank a little bit. So I'm going to stretch it out a little bit, which I think will give my books a little bit more, maybe just a little bit more. I don't know. We'll see. So, but that is my game plan. I have just finished the 3rd book in this series, and it's now in edits, but that is Jax's story. So I've got the 3rd book and I've left it open, and I'm going to leave it open for more. I'm hoping that this series I hope my fans love it as much as I do. And I'm able to infuse a nice romantic suspense type of action-packed book like this every once in a while in my field. And then I have a whole new series that I'm starting to work on now, which is based here in San Diego, that's going to have a little Italy, and it's going to cross into Italy itself vibe. And it's going to be more family and saga and a little more, I don't know, just a little different than this, which is going to be nice to have that mix.
As tragic as having an accident at work is, don't you like when you can see the perspective of like how everything comes together like you're doing what you were meant to do. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes.
I think it's so inspirational because as women, like we just try, we think, okay, we're going down one path. This is it. Even with marriages, children, whatever, this is what we're going to do. And then life just kind of says, no, you're going to.
No, my gosh. I mean, in the last 2 years, I've gone, well, 3 years actually, but in the last 2 years for sure, I have an empty nest. I was already divorced and that's fine, but I have a completely empty nest. My children don't even live in this state, for crying out loud. I have to fly to go see them, which is fine, except for when COVID hits and you can't go, We're just now feeling like we can spread our wings a little bit, which is great. My father had a stroke and now he's living close to me, but in an assisted living. And so that changed my life a lot. And traveling became difficult, obviously, for everybody this year. And that is my go-to for inspiration. That's my first world problem. And it is my first world problem. Poor me, I can't go out. And I get that. But on the other hand, picking up my laptop and going, I need to get out so I can refuel. And I need to meet people. People are like, how do you get your ideas? I'm like, when I walk into a room, I say to everybody, hi, my name's Catherine Bybee. I'm a writer. Anything you say can and will be used in a book that may or may not be translated into over a dozen languages. Nice to meet you. I say it every single time. And they're like, where do you come up with your ideas? I'm like, I don't know. Who are you married to? Tell me your story.
Tell me your story. What do you got going?
Right. What did you really want to be when you grew up?
Yeah.
Who was your first love? Do you like cats? Do you like dogs?
So cool. And you're so, you've turned out to be such a successful author. I just think it's very cool. It's such a cool story. You should write your own story. That's
What's that?
Write your own story.
Well, if you read enough of my books, I could probably piece together a lot of my story by this section, this section, this section. Yeah. People are like, you write about yourself? I'm like, I have a pretty interesting life. Let me just dowel it out. You can't be an ER nurse and not have a crap on stuff anymore.
Exactly. Well,
and it's all real. Life is much more interesting than fiction.
Yes. I loved Claire's story. I can't wait to see what more is going to happen with Cooper.
Oh my gosh. Wait. In the third book, is when he pops the question.
Okay.
And does it in the most epic of ways.
That's awesome, because I'm not going to give you any giveaways of how this ends. We don't want to talk about it. I'm just saying.
If you're reading a romance novel, if you're reading a Bybee romance novel, it's going to end in a happily ever after, at least a happy.
And that's what we love happily ever after. We want to finish a book with a smile on our face. That's what we right?
Yeah. No, this is this incorporates so many things in my life that I just love in terms of writing anyway. So
all right, well, hold up your next book too, because we're gonna let everybody see it, because I want to get that copy. These covers are just so cool.
And again, this looks like Olivia, and you actually, if you read Say It Again, Olivia pops in briefly and she pops right back out. And I mentioned Olivia in this book, but she doesn't really come into play.
Right.
But she's an assassin.
Yeah,
huh? She's an assassin.
Yeah. I can't wait. I'm going to read it and we're going to talk again, because this was so much fun, Catherine. Thank you so much. And if I didn't say this, because I don't think I did, this book comes out this Tuesday,
March 23rd, right?
Go on Amazon and pre-order it. Yes, it comes out on Tuesday. That one comes out in July, and I can't wait.
Yay. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Have a great weekend, and we will talk soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, bye-bye.